kind of catch me off guard a little bit, so I didn't know what was, you know, what was coming.
And then the next day it ended up front page of The Sun. Denise and I were like, oh, wow, that's amazing.
You can't be in Corrie and not have a catfight on the cobbles.
In 1986, the Street's producers decided that the Rovers needed a refurbishment. So at 33 in your countdown, what better way than to burn it down and start again?
If it's got a 5-amp plug, you don't put 13 or 15 in. Jack did.
The fire at the Rovers that day, oh my gosh, I was so excited. Kevin, don't do anything stupid! I had to go down Coronation Street and bang on every door and say, come out, you know. So I ran down the road and banged on the first door and cut. Who lives here? And they were like, no, that's Ken Barlow. Oh, Ken Barlow. Ken!
What's going on?
Hey, Susan, fire, get the fire brigade!
My mum always used to go through scripts with me, learning, and when she read that, she wasn't happy at all. It was really, really frightening. The wardrobe department had flame-proofed the nightie I was wearing. The scream at the top of the staircase was for real. I was terrified.
Julie had every reason to be scared, but thankfully the production crew were on hand.
The first time we did it, I wasn't as frightened until the fire got completely out of control and the whole staircase collapsed.
The famous story is I picked her up and I ran her through the flames. Followed very closely by a couple of firemen with 3.5-inch hoses to put a real fire out.
And I'm quite convinced he saved my life.
I bet you any money she's been smoking in bed.
When I watch it back, I am very proud of it. Would I do it again? No way.
Couldn't you just hang on a bit, love? Give me time to get my face on.
Terry Duckworth.
Terry were always a bad lad.
Our Terry.
Like the proverbial bad penny, Terry Duckworth turns up bringing misery to all. And in 1993, he stooped lower than ever in a story that disgusted the nation.
You can't get much lower than selling your own son, can you?
What have you done with him?
What the hell's going on here?
A girlfriend phoned me up and said, Nigel, are you all right? I said, well, yeah, of course I'm all right. And I said, well, why shouldn't I be? He said, I've just read the papers. You're going to be the most hated man in the country.
What am I supposed to do with a kid that doesn't even know me, Mum?
You can't just tear a kid out of here because he doesn't suit you to look after him.
He were quite hated by a lot of people.
You're trying to tell me that you are doing all this for somebody else's benefit? Well, I hope the lie chokes you.
Oh, Dad!
Hey, this is getting out of hand. You only do that in one stat. I don't want you calling me that no more, you.
Oh, I just want him back!
When the programme went out, it was sad. Christmas Eve. It was a big thing to play that part.
I just wanted to do a good job. And the more people hated me, the more I realised I'd done a good job.
Still to come, Roy comes a cropper thanks to toxic Tracy Barlow.
Tracy Barlow gets pregnant by Roy, and you're like, how does that happen?
And it's back to how the magic began.
It went to the top of the ratings and has never been out of the top 10 ever since.
Welcome back to our countdown of classic Coronation Street moments as voted for by you. And at 31, it's time to remember toxic Tracy Barlow's most depraved stunt yet, spiking Roy Cropper's drink and leading him not only to temptation, but also into believing that they'd shared a night of passion, and all because of a 1-penny bet.
That was an interesting storyline because on paper it looked ridiculous.
OK, so Tracy Barlow gets pregnant by Roy, and you're like, how does that happen?
Get him into bed all right. I just don't think I could actually do anything when I got him there. Can you imagine it?
That is my favourite time on Coronation Street, that storyline with Roy Cropper.
Oh, there you go, Roy.
I thought I'd drunk most of that.
Toxic.
Some of my favourite scenes were the scenes when we were in bed, in Tracy's bed.
Are you coming to bed with me?
Of course I am. David was there and he'd had this idea that his Y-fronts would be flung over the lamp. That was David's idea, and that was great.
You know the character, you know what you're playing, you know how that might be made particular to Roy. It's the way my mind works, really.
Breakfast ready.
Shall I give Tracy a shout? One of the most unlikely things you could ever imagine will be Roy Cropper creeping down the stairs in the Barlows while they're having breakfast, having just been in bed with Tracy. You just could not imagine that situation.
Do you know, yesterday went really well. Well, without a hitch, actually. Roy?
Good morning.
Cup of tea?
Bye.
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 It was like the cat stuck trying to get out through the crack in the door or anywhere.
It's double locked.
Yeah, I'll get the key. It won't take a minute. Nobody's saying, what the devil are you doing here? What have you been up to?
So, is Tracy upstairs?
I think she is, yes.
You think she is? Were you really going to sneak off without saying goodbye, you naughty boy?
I'm sorry, I've got to go. Goodbye.
What the hell's going on, Tracy?
What have you done?
I'm really fond of that whole storyline. I loved it.
Next, when the Ogden's lodger Eddie Yates ran out of wallpaper, he brought home something that was to become a national treasure.
There, that is your scenic panorama contrast wall.
The Ogdens were the only people in the street who had bought their house. Everybody else was renting.
Annie Walker's never had one of them mural walls, that I do know. I think it'll suit us very nicely, will that?
That was a thing that made Hilda feel a little bit superior from the outset.
It's a new flaming mural.
Ah, Stan, sure.
With a picture on the wall, you know. It's good too.
Do you mean a mural, by any chance? Oh, no, Mrs. Walker. No, this is a picture on the wall.
Annie was horrified, probably made some snide remark.
Come in, it's open house. Oh, I just...
Aha, you couldn't resist it, you couldn't.
There's so much about Coronation Street which is iconic, and it's as iconic as the three curlers in Hilda's hair.
Shut your eyes, turn round and open them.
Oh, my word, Mrs. Ogden. Do you know, dear, I feel just a little giddy. Would you mind if I sat facing the other way until I'm acclimatised?
Well, either you're one for the great outdoors or you're not. Myself, I am.
At 29, it's the sorry tale of one bookie, two barmaids and a big broken heart. Des won himself a second chance with Raquel, but was about to throw it all away.
You get Raquel, who everyone wants to just wrap up in cotton wool.
Des, I'm ready.
Right, I'm coming.
Like lots of women, she didn't want a decent guy. She wanted somebody exciting, like Des.
They're in love and everything's fine, and this dilemma's going on in his head. Oh, she's, you know, she's so gorgeous, and then he looks over there and just sees Tanya. You understand why he did it. I'm sure everyone understands why he did it. I do.
Come back to my flat.
There was just one small problem. Alex, Tanya's other boyfriend and Des's boss.
She becomes an addiction. So everything was in place, really. You know, you just put the pieces together and there you have the perfect jigsaw, really. Des! Get your clothes on and shove up! Or get out of that bed! You're in bed with my girl! Get out before I kill you! Raquel. There was an overwhelming amount of sympathy for Raquel, always. Sarah Lancashire said to me, they're going to hate you for this. The next day, we went out somewhere to some supermarket and all the women were like, you're terrible. And all the blokes were like, nice one.
At 28, we go back to how it all began and Coronation Street's first episode. Created by Tony Warren, the series was originally called Florizel Street until the studio tea lady pointed out that it sounded like disinfectant. Intended to run for only 13 episodes, the rest is television history. And did you know that a budding 60s pop star was one of its very first faces?
I'm very proud to say that I was actually one of the first faces to be seen on the first episode. I was actually the little girl that was bouncing the ball.
1, 2, 3, 4. Mary at the cottage door.
Coronation Street's all right. Mind, there's some you'll have to watch.
It was very important to me that they used real northern actors.
I had just had the lead in a television play, Marking Time it was called, and I recorded that up at Granada. And unbeknown to me, it's while I was recording that Tony Warren brought Josie Scott, the casting woman, down and said, "That's the guy I want to play Kambala."
I got a record.
One I'd like.
You might, I'm not sure.
When I look back to episode 1, I just think how thin I was.
Some parts were easy to cast. Phoenix and I took one look at one another.
Hey, Elsie. Just about ready for the knacker yard.
And she knew she'd found her author, and I knew I'd found my star.
Oh, Linda. I don't know what we're going to do. What about?
I got the call to say I'd got the part of Linda Chevesky, and would I like to start on Monday?
Shall I go blonde?
Well, why ask me? If you want to go blonde, you'll go blonde, you know that.
Ivan nearly went mad when he found a bottle of peroxide I brought in. I wouldn't care, but it would have wanted to take a mark off my front tooth.
Shall I go blonde? Well, I have. Well, it's not. It's grey.
It used to go out on a Friday and a Monday at 7 o'clock. We'd do the Friday one live.
As it approached 7 o'clock, I heard the floor manager say, "Right, settle down, studio, 10 seconds, none." And I went rigid.
So you're stuck to going in a lady's handbag?
Just listen it. A lady, is that what you crack on you these days?
But all the characters have got bits of me in.
And Mrs. Sharples?
I'm very pleased to meet you.
And as for Enid, well, I grow more like her every day.
Well, them fancies today's?
Yes.
I'll take half a dozen and no eclairs. No eclairs.
It hit the screen with that unbelievable impact
That'll be 4 and 7.8 altogether.
and was a roaring success within those 6 weeks. I think it went to the top of the ratings and has never been out of the top 10 ever since.
When Deirdre Rashid started dating supposed pilot John Lindsay,
You fly carefully. It's a long way to Nairobi.
little did she know that he wasn't the man he said he was.
The fact it spanned over a long period of time really worked to its favour, because there were various times when he had to justify himself. When Ken found him in Iraq and tried to explain to Deirdre what happened, she didn't believe him. Then she turned up and found him there, and then he had to come up with some kind of story as to why that was the case.
Yes, can I? Go on, then. Lie your way out of this one. You don't think about that sort of thing happening, do you? But it does happen. And it's based on, actually, a true story.
John won Deirdre over,
Will you marry me?
but his fraudulent actions got worse.
I told you I'd surprise you one day.
And it was Deirdre that got caught in the firing line.
In a few moments, you'll be formally charged.
What with?
1 count of obtaining a credit card by deception. 1 count of procuring a mortgage by fraud.
When the trial comes, there's a really big climax, and the fact that she is blamed for so much of the stuff that he's engineered, and that kind of sense of injustice, you know, that everybody feels, it really allowed the audience to enjoy the payoff at the trial at the end.
The jury has found you guilty by a unanimous verdict of all the counts against you. Have you anything to say?
I didn't do any of it.
Take the defendant down with you.
The Free Deirdre business was a total shock. I wasn't expecting anything like the sort of reaction that it got. My mother-in-law rang me and said, "Have you got news at 10 on?" And I said, "No." She said, "Well, put it on because you're on."
Overnight, Coronation Street fans began a campaign to free Deirdre Rashid, who was jailed in last night's episode. And now it seems even the Prime Minister wants to get involved.
The whole press campaign about the Weatherfield one was very, very clever. I mean, this whole sort of like, we've released her because of the press campaign. Look, come on, she went to prison for 3 weeks. She was always going to prison for 3 weeks. But I love the fact that The Sun, to this day, claim credit for getting her out in 3 weeks.
I told you I'd get you out, didn't I? I promised.
At number 26, Peter Barlow turns bigamist when he says "I do" to both Lucy and Shelley.
It's very exciting when the storylines start to come through and you try to guess where it's going to end up. He slowly got deeper and deeper in. From a chance meeting, he was actually buying flowers to take back to Shelley.
Peter, by the way.
Oh, Lucy.
Yeah, I know. Your name's outside.
It wasn't long before Peter was caught up with florist Lucy, but this was to be no bed of roses.
Any regrets?
No, I don't. It's great. There was one little bit for me that was instrumental in that story.
I do love you, you know.
Yeah.
I love you too.
He's taken his tie off and he looks in the mirror now. I think in the script